Samantha had always envisioned her home as a sanctuary. Ever since she moved into her quaint little house in the suburbs, it had been a place of comfort and laughter. But today, as she flipped through the glossy invitation to her sister's wedding, a knot formed in her stomach. The colors were bright and cheerful, promising a joyous occasion, but the thought of her mother attending filled her with dread. Their last encounter had ended in a screaming match, and Samantha wasn't ready to face her mother again, especially in front of family. As she stared at the invitation, memories flooded back. The countless times her mother had belittled her choices, her career, and even her taste in friends. It had been years since Samantha had managed to establish her independence, but the scars from her mother's words still stung. With a heavy heart, she decided to call her sister Julia to voice her concerns. "Hey, Jules, did you really have to invite Mom?" Samantha asked, trying to keep her tone light. "Of course. She's our mother, Sam. We can't just ignore her," Julia replied, her voice laced with frustration. "It's a family wedding." "Right, but you know how she can be? Last time she made a scene at my birthday," Samantha protested, recalling the embarrassment of that night. Julia sighed. "Look, I get it, but it's my wedding, and I want everyone there. Just try to keep the peace, okay?" The conversation ended with Samantha feeling more anxious than before. How could she keep the peace when her mother thrived on chaos? As the day of the wedding approached, Samantha's worries intensified, filling her with a sense of impending doom. The morning of the wedding arrived, and Samantha felt a mix of excitement and dread. She dressed carefully, opting for a simple yet elegant dress that reflected her style. In the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her, anxious eyes, tense shoulders, and a forced smile. As she arrived at the venue, the air buzzed with laughter and music. Julia's wedding planner had done an incredible job, transforming the space into a magical wonderland. But as soon as she stepped inside, Samantha spotted her mother across the room. Dressed in a vibrant red gown, she commanded attention, chatting animatedly with family members, her laughter ringing through the air. Taking a deep breath, Samantha steeled herself and approached her mother, ready to put on a brave face. "Hi, Mom. You look lovely," she said, forcing a smile. "Thank you, dear. It's such a beautiful day," her mother exclaimed, but Samantha could see the underlying tension in her eyes. "Yeah, it really is," Samantha replied, trying to gauge her mother's mood. "Have you seen Julia?" "Oh, she's busy with her bridesmaids," her mother said, waving dismissively. "Why don't you go find her? I'll mingle here." As Samantha moved away, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. Maybe today wouldn't be so bad after all. But just as she turned to find Julia, her mother's voice echoed behind her. "Samantha, why aren't you hanging out with your mother? I'm the one who raised you, you know." The crowd quieted, and Samantha's face burned with embarrassment. She forced herself to smile, but the tension in her chest tightened. "Mom, I'm just looking for Julia," her mother huffed. "You always want to run away. Just because you're an adult doesn't mean you can ignore your family." Samantha took a step back, feeling trapped. She knew her mother had a knack for turning every situation into a confrontation, and she was determined not to let that happen today. "I'll be right back," she mumbled, before darting off to find Julia. As Samantha searched for her sister, she couldn't shake the feeling of her mother's eyes boring into her back. The wedding was in full swing, with guests chatting and dancing, but Samantha felt like she was walking on eggshells. The fear of another outburst lingered in her mind, threatening to ruin the day. Finally, she found Julia surrounded by her friends, looking radiant in her wedding gown. "There you are," Julia exclaimed, pulling Samantha into a hug. "Everything's going perfectly. I'm so glad you're here." "I'm trying," Samantha replied, forcing a smile. "But Mom is already making me nervous." Julia sighed, glancing back toward their mother. "I know. Just stick with me, okay? I'll handle her if she starts anything." Samantha nodded, grateful for Julia's support. The ceremony began, and as they took their seats, Samantha found herself zoning out, her mind racing with thoughts of what might happen next. The vows were beautiful, and the couple exchanged promises that filled the air with love and hope. But as soon as the ceremony ended and the guests mingled again, Samantha felt a presence behind her. It was her mother. Her eyes narrowed, a smirk on her lips. "You should be grateful I came, Samantha. You're lucky to have a mother who cares," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Mom, today isn't about us. It's about Julia," Samantha replied, trying to keep her composure. "Right, but you're still my daughter. You should be celebrating with me," her mother retorted, the tension palpable. Samantha felt her heart race as she glanced around, searching for Julia. "I need to find her. Excuse me," she said, brushing past her mother and moving into the crowd. As the evening wore on, Samantha tried to enjoy herself. The reception was lively, with music, laughter, and dancing filling the room. But her mother's words hung heavily in the air, a constant reminder of the unresolved tension. Just when she thought she could relax, Samantha spotted her mother in a heated conversation with a distant relative. The volume rose, and Samantha's stomach dropped. She could see the crowd starting to gather, drawn in by the commotion. "Mom, please, not here!" Samantha shouted as she rushed over, but it was too late. Her mother had already turned the conversation into a spectacle, waving her arms dramatically as she recounted past grievances. "You don't understand. Samantha thinks she's too good for us now," her mother declared, her voice echoing across the room. Samantha felt the heat rise to her face as the guests turned to look at her. "Mom, that's not fair. I've worked hard to be independent," she protested. "And look where that independence has gotten you, alone, without a partner." Her mother shot back, her words sharp and cutting. Samantha's heart sank. The room felt suffocating as whispers erupted among the guests. She had always dreaded her mother's ability to turn situations against her, but this was a new low. "I'm not alone. I have friends and a career I love," she argued, desperately trying to regain control. Her mother laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "Friends won't always be there for you, Sam. You'll see," she said, her tone chilling. The tension reached a boiling point, and Samantha felt tears prick at her eyes. She didn't want to cry, especially not in front of everyone. Just then, Julia stepped in, her expression fierce. "Enough, Mom! This is my wedding, and I won't let you ruin it," she shouted, standing between them. "Samantha deserves respect, and you need to stop." The crowd went silent, and for a moment it felt like time stood still. Samantha's heart raced as she watched her sister confront their mother, a mix of pride and fear coursing through her. The confrontation sent shockwaves through the room. Samantha could see the concern on the faces of their relatives, but she felt a strange sense of liberation. It was as if the weight of her mother's expectations had finally lifted, even if just a little. After the awkward silence, Julia took Samantha by the arm and led her away from the chaos. "Let's get some air," she suggested, guiding them to a quieter corner outside. The night air was refreshing, a stark contrast to the tension they had just left behind. "Thanks for stepping in there," Samantha said, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't know how to handle it." Julia sighed, shaking her head. "You shouldn't have to. Mom has a way of making everything about her. It's exhausting." "I feel like I'm always walking on eggshells around her," Samantha admitted, running a hand through her hair. "I thought today would be different, but it's just the same old cycle." "Maybe it's time to break that cycle," Julia suggested, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "You don't owe her anything, Sam. You've built a life for yourself." Samantha took a deep breath, feeling a flicker of hope. "You're right. I can't keep letting her control my emotions. I need to stand up for myself." With newfound determination, she resolved to confront her mother once and for all. No longer would she allow fear to dictate her actions. They returned inside, where the party continued, and Samantha felt a sense of empowerment wash over her. As the night wore on, Samantha spotted her mother sitting at a table, the remnants of her meal untouched. Taking a deep breath, she walked over, her heart pounding. "Mom, we need to talk," she said firmly. Her mother looked up, surprised, but guarded. "About what? Your little outburst earlier?" Samantha clenched her fists. "It wasn't an outburst. It was me standing up for myself. I'm tired of you undermining me and making me feel small." Her mother's expression hardened. You think you can just talk to me like that? I'm your mother. And I'm an adult. I deserve respect just like you do, Samantha shot back, surprising herself with her boldness. For a moment, they locked eyes, and Samantha could see the flicker of uncertainty in her mother's gaze. You think you're better than us now? Her mother spat. No, I don't. I love my family, but I can't continue to let you treat me this way, Samantha said, her voice steady. If you want to be part of my life, then you need to change. Her mother stared at her, processing the words. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken feelings. You're my daughter, she finally said, her tone softer but still defensive. I just want what's best for you. I know that, but your way isn't working for me. I need to live my life on my own terms, Samantha replied, feeling a sense of release. With that, she turned to leave, but her mother's voice stopped her. Samantha, wait, Samantha paused, heart racing. What is it, Mom? I don't know how to change. I've always been this way, her mother admitted, vulnerability creeping into her tone. Maybe it's time to learn, Samantha said, surprising herself with her compassion. I'll help you, but it has to be a two-way street. The night ended on a different note than it began. Samantha and her mother exchanged a tentative truce, and though the road ahead seemed uncertain, a flicker of hope illuminated the darkness. As they rejoined the celebration, Samantha felt lighter, as if she had finally shed a heavy burden. The following weeks were filled with challenges, but Samantha was determined to foster a new relationship with her mother. They started having open conversations, addressing past grievances and setting boundaries. It wasn't easy, but slowly they began to understand each other. Julia noticed the changes, and as they sat together one evening, she smiled. You did it, Sam. You stood up to her. I'm still learning, but it feels good to finally speak my truth, Samantha replied, feeling a sense of empowerment. Together, they reflected on the journey ahead, ready to face whatever challenges lay in store. With newfound strength and a commitment to breaking the cycle, Samantha stepped into her future, determined to build a life defined by love, respect, and authenticity.